This is the place where NFL legends live on and share their stories. This is the place for our Spotlight on the Positive segment, sharing what's good in the world of sports. This is also the place for the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. This place I speak of, Thursday Night Tailgate. Let's say hello to your hosts, Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari. Guys, take it away.
Hey, thank you, Joe, and happy Thursday, everybody, and thank you for coming back and joining us tonight on Thursday Night Tailgate, where your favorite NFL legends live on. Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazzari, we're here with you tonight, and we're going to be talking Super Bowls past and present with a mix of some old friends, some new ones that we're very excited to have joining us for the first time. We'll take a look back at some of the Super Bowls of the 70s and the 80s, plus a look ahead to this Sunday, Super Bowl 52, and we're going to do it with some great NFL legends and media members from around the country, but no one greater than my co-host, Mr. Bob Lazzari. Let's bring Bob into the show. Bob, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hey, good evening, Chris, and welcome to February, everyone, and hope everything's going well with you, sir.
Yeah, not bad. It's been a pretty good week. We got like everybody else around the country, we got a house full of folks, coughing and hacking. I got a little bit myself. Hopefully I'm trying to fend it off with the echinacea and the vitamin C and water and, everything I can do to try to stay healthy. But, Bob, worst flu season ever, right? So, as most of us around the country are dealing with trying to stay as healthy as possible. How about you? I know you guys are in for another dose of winter up there.
Yeah, I'm losing track of the storms and the ice and everything, Chris, but I'll just give you tonight's forecast here. It's raining now, and the temperature's supposed to plummet into the teens, which is going to make a brutal morning commute, and all we can hope is that people stay safe and drive safely. It's pretty bad, Chris.
Yeah, no, everyone please stay safe out there. Holy cow. Just when we think maybe it's starting to get a little bit milder for the winter, but no. Winter comes back and tells you, no, I'm going to be around for it. Tomorrow's Groundhog Day, right, Bob? I'm really hoping that guy doesn't see a shadow. I got folks up there around Philly and in Pennsylvania, going to go try to talk some sense into this groundhog. Hopefully we don't get 6 more weeks, my friend.
Yeah, he hasn't been cooperating lately, but hey, he's just as good as any weatherman I know, Chris. So.
Indeed. So how's the excitement level up there in New England? We talked a little bit about this last week on the show. Is there anticipation up there for Sunday's game, Bob, or is it, ho-hum, we're in another Super Bowl?
It's the ho-hum, Chris. Like I said last week, they're so used to being in it, and it's not a cockiness. It's just the way that they operate up here. Anything less than a Super Bowl is a bad season up here. It's like the Yankee mentality in baseball. That's how they operate, Chris. So, yeah, they're just waiting for the game Sunday, very patiently, just waiting, and the only thing they're kind of keeping their eye on is the health of guys like Gronkowski, and hopefully nothing else bad comes down the pike. But yeah, it's typical and more of the same here, Chris.
Yeah, I see, and you mentioned Gronk. I see Gronk passed the concussion protocol, so he's going to be good to go for Sunday. So everyone's going to be at as close to full strength as they could. Obviously, the Eagles dealing without Carson Wentz and the emergence of Nick Foles, and they've had a couple of other injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but those took place earlier in the season. So I think most teams both teams are going to go in about as healthy as they could, Bob. Under the circumstances, so it's going to be a great game. We'll talk obviously a lot more about it when Tony joins us about a half an hour from now. But it should be a very good game, and a little peek under the tent. I like what our good friend Russell Baxter had to say. The 5 reasons why the Eagles will win this game. We'll talk about that with Tony as well. But I think I don't think this is going to be a layup, Bob. In other words, I think the Patriots, if they win this one, and not that any of their Super Bowls, by the way, have been a blowout, right? If you look back over time, they sort of just eke these things out. 3 points here, obviously the win coming against the Falcons last year. So it's not like the Patriots have gone into any of these Super Bowls and blown doors, and just, asserted their dominance. And I don't think this one's going to be any different. I think it's going to be a close game.
I believe so, Chris. And again, it lends credence to the fact that people always came down on the fact that it was a 2-week period in between. But Patriots will benefit from that, obviously, with Gronkowski now. So it's guys that are banged up, getting a little more healthier, and they're ready to roll right now.
So let's talk about who we've got coming on joining us tonight. And Bob, I'm very excited about our first guest tonight, former Steelers Pro Bowl defensive back J.T. Thomas. He's another one of the legendary Steelers from those 70s teams that won 4 Super Bowls. He was a guy I always enjoyed watching. I'm looking forward to hearing his memories from that time, plus what it was like teaming with Mel Blount to make up one of the great defensive back duos of all time as well, Bob.
Anytime we could talk to an old Steeler, Chris, it's always a pleasure, like Andy Russell, Levon Kirk, all the guys we've talked to in the past. But Thomas, 9 years in the league, 3 Super Bowl rings, that's a good percentage, Chris. You take that anytime. But a Pro Bowler in 76 who played, his entire career in Pittsburgh for one coach, Chuck Noll. So that'll be great getting some terrific memories from him.
Yeah, and just to build off that, and you mentioned 3 Super Bowl rings. He was there over that whole time. Unfortunately, missed the 78 season due to a blood disorder, but was there for the entirety of that time. So looking forward to catching up with JT. At the bottom of the hour, like we do every week, we'll have former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. We'll get some more memories from Tony for what it was like when he played in Super Bowl 20 against that 85 Bears team. What did they do? Now here it is Thursday, right? If it's Thursday of that week, what did they do on Friday and Saturday? What were the last-minute things they were trying to put into the game plan? What was it like, being in New Orleans, heading into that game? We'll talk about that. And like I say, Russell Baxter put out those 5 reasons why the Eagles are going to win, so we'll talk about that as well. So looking forward to catching up with Tony as always. About 45 minutes from now, former Bucs linebacker Chris Washington will be making his TNT debut with us. And Bob, Chris comes to us as a recommendation from our good friend Gay Culverhouse. He spent the majority of his career down there playing in Tampa Bay, but he's also one of the greatest players in Iowa State history, and he's in their Hall of Fame, just like another one of our great friends here on the show, Mike Stensrud, who joined us a couple of months ago. He's also in the Iowa State Hall of Fame and spoke very highly of Chris, by the way. I talked to Mongo, and he had a lot of really good things to say about Chris. So, Bob, looking forward to having Chris as part of the show.
Like you said, Chris, an Iowa State product who played on some not-so-good Buccaneer teams back in the 80s, but a very active linebacker who possessed the quickness and ability to sack the quarterback. So we're happy to have him on. Yeah,
absolutely. And then we'll get in hour number 2. We're going to have 2 of our great friends, both guys TNT guest Hall of Famers, and probably 2 of the best media guys from Pittsburgh and Atlanta, and that's Paul Alexander and Beau Bock. And Bob, I need to know from Paul help understanding why everything went south for the Steelers against the Jags. So I'm looking forward to getting Paul's insights. And then from Beau, my in-laws, my wife, are huge Georgia fans, University of Georgia fans, big Falcons fans, and as we've seen over the last 12 months, right? The Falcons and then UGA sort of torturing the fans, right? On the brink of a Super Bowl victory, on the brink of a national championship, and then sort of the rug gets pulled out, underneath both teams, and then so fans around here obviously dazed, from both of those experiences. So it'll be good to get both of those guys here, what their insights are, not only from the Steelers, from Paul, but then for UGA and the Falcons from Beau as well.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. Both of those men have been very busy the last couple of months with all the stuff going in their respective towns, but there's a reason why both of them are in our Hall of Fame, because they know their craft, and it's always great to have them come back on.
Yes, it is. So, folks, as you can see, we are jam-packed tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate, so sit back, relax, let Bob and I take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. And folks, as you know, we are brought to you by the great folks over at the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, the Salt Creek Golf Retreat up in beautiful Nashville, Indiana, our friends over at Tops and our partners at the NFL Alumni Association and Mike Ditka's organization, the Gridiron Greats, who we love. Go online, check them out at gridirongreats.org. Also, check out our newest sponsors, former Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and his company, DP Quality Foods. Dan has a lineup of award-winning spices that you're going to love. Check them out online by going to dpqualityfoods.com. And former Pro Bowl quarterback Drew Bledsoe and his winery, Doubleback Winery. You can find their great selections online at doubleback.com. AT&amp.com.
It's time for another edition of Bob's Take. So, Bob, tell us, what's on your mind tonight?
All right, let's get into this week's edition of Bob's Take. And, Bob, I want to start by getting your thoughts on the Redskins trade for Alex Smith from the Chiefs that happened yesterday. The Chiefs get a third-round pick in this year's draft, plus highly touted defensive back Kendall Fuller. It seems like a high price, Bob, to me, for them to pay for Alex Smith, who I'm not sure isn't all that different from Kirk Cousins. I don't know. Your thoughts. What's your take on the trade?
I was pretty surprised, Chris, in a bit, but the more you read about both of them and their time in their respective places, they both probably had landing spots, new landing spots next year. You just didn't think they might cross paths with each other. But Smith, Chris, ironically had his best year probably as a pro, but we knew if he went out in the playoffs before a championship game or anything, he was not going to be around. So, he'll be reunited in a way with Gruden. And Gruden is one of those guys, they think, I guess, Chris, they think his play calling will be able to help Smith play at as high as level as he can play. He's been known as one of those game managers over the years. We talked about it ad nauseum. They just think that, from what I'm reading, that Smith is a very good fit under the Gruden system. Cousins, Chris, he's probably a little bit better quarterback than Smith, but he's always had that kind of the moniker in Washington that he's just not that top-tier quarterback. Ironically, he will get top-tier money, Chris, because he's a starting quarterback in the league that's going to be in demand. And it's that whole Joe Flacco mentality, and you're very familiar with that. You make a little bit of noise, and you get in demand a little bit, and you could basically name your own price. But I was kind of surprised. I mean, you're right. They did give up a good defensive back, a third-round pick for an Alex Smith who, Chris, you still have to play both sides of the ball, too. So if you're giving up a good part of your defense, or at least a good cog in the defense, Alex Smith on the other team is not going to get to the Super Bowl for you himself. And I think Cousins is the same way. I think they're very similar guys, Chris. I mean, people think that they're a lot different. I don't think they are. I think they both have to be surrounded by a lot of talent to win. And again, it's just interesting that they're both of their paths crossed in such a thing. I think Cousins, as far as a landing spot, Chris, they're talking a lot up here about him in New York with the Jets. Well, the Jets need him, but is it a good place for him to go? They're not ready to win right away, Chris, and I don't think just putting Cousins in New York is going to have you win. I think the best spot for him would probably be out in Denver, because Denver can sell you on their defense right away. It's a very good one. And getting an established quarterback with some good offensive players, that would be, I think, his ideal landing place right now.
Yeah, and I agree with that too, Bob. Von Miller is out there lobbying to get Cousins out there in Denver, thinks that he could put them back over the top next season. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Cousins ends up. I think there's going to be a handful of suitors that will be in touch. You would think, Cleveland, Joe Thomas is out there lobbying, for the Browns to get, Kirk Cousins. So, I think there are a handful of teams that'll be in sort of the sweepstakes for Kirk Cousins. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where he ends up. Bob, one more, and we always strive to keep things on the positive side here on the show, but you sent out a response to a tweet, which I agreed with you on a topic that really had me shaking my head, and that's regarding O.J. Simpson and the battle he's in with the Goldman family regarding the income that O.J. makes from selling autographs, and in particular this story, autograph posters of The People versus O.J. Simpson, the miniseries that the FX network did a couple of years ago. And what's so disturbing to me, Bob, is there are people actually buying these posters. And what in the world would anyone be doing with an autograph poster of that miniseries with O.J.'s name on it? Your take. I'm baffled here.
I'm as baffled as you are, if not more so, Chris. Let's face it, if there's anybody listening who is a huge O.J. Simpson fan as far as his character and everything. Maybe go listen to another show, because this show may not be for you. But it amazes me, Chris, that this guy was found liable as far as a civil suit for all that money, and you would think any kind of income that guy got, if he had any conscience at all, he would probably spend the rest of his life at least trying to repay a little bit. I mean, I don't know how he gets around it, Chris. I guess it's more about the law in this country than it is about Simpson himself, how he can get away with this kind of stuff. From what I gather, they haven't seen anything, or maybe not much, since that verdict came in. I don't want to get into any kind of politics or law on the show, but the guy owes them money, bottom line, Chris. And for him, I guess a judge this week said, I guess he doesn't have to bark it up. Again, I try not to even read about it, Chris, because I spent more of my time trying to come up with tonight's spotlight on the positive honoree. So, but yeah, I think it's disgusting, Chris. And a guy that low, we probably shouldn't give him more than a couple seconds on this show.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, folks, there you go. That is Bob's take for this week. And folks, as you know, here on TNT, we are sponsored by the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. 13 days, right, until pitchers and catchers start reporting for spring training. And if you can't wait for baseball, you just love the game, you got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame. The museum is a very cool experience for everybody in your family, because you get to go walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year, and they've been doing it now for 132 years. Don't miss the Bat Vault, because you can go in there and hold actual game-used bats from so many of the game's greatest legends, guys like Hank Aaron, Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go online to sluggermuseum.com. We're also proud to be sponsored by, our good friend Randy Minier and the great folks up at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat in Nashville, Indiana, which, oh, by the way, was voted one of the top 20 small towns in the country by Smithsonian Magazine, as well as our new sponsor from former Houston Oilers quarterback Dan Pastorini and DP Quality Foods. Let's hear about both of them from our announcer, Joe LaGenusa.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels, and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giant fullback Randy Minier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your round, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today. Most folks are familiar with Dan Pastorini's accomplishments on the football field or in race cars. But what most don't know? Dan's family background in the restaurant business. For 37 years, Dan's parents, Dante and Dorothy, owned and operated Pastorini's Longhorn Restaurant. So the Pastorini family has a long history of making great-tasting food from family recipes. Dan and his partners want to bring some of that to you with their Texas-style rub, Texas-style hickory rub, and their garlic and herb seasoning. First introduced back in 2011, Dan's Texas-style rub immediately began winning awards, taking home the first-place trophy for Best Ribs at the Pasadena Livestock Show and Barbecue Cook-Off. They did it again at the 2012 Texas Ranger Wounded Warrior Cook-Off, and the awards just keep on coming. Check out Dan's line of spices online at dpqualityfoods.com That's dpqualityfoods.com. And take what you put on the grill to a whole new level.
Yeah, check them both out online at saltcreekgolf.com and dpqualityfoods.com. All right, now joining us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Steelers Pro Bowl defensive back J.T. Thomas. Let me give you some background on J.T. He's from Macon, Georgia, just a little south of me here in Atlanta. Played his college ball at Florida State. He was a first-round draft pick, the 24th overall selection in 1973 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he played in the league from 73 to 1982, all but his last season were in Pittsburgh. He played that last year over in Denver. He was a part of the Steelers' 4 Super Bowl championship teams back in the 1970s. He was named to the Pro Bowl in 1976. And over the course of his career, he had 20 interceptions, forced 2 fumbles, recovered 1, and scored 2 touchdowns. He helped seal the Steelers' 1974 AFC Championship game victory over the Raiders with an interception and a 37-yard return off Ken Stabler in the fourth quarter. Had another big interception and a fumble recovery against the Cowboys in Super Bowl X. And we are honored that he is with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, JT, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, guys. Definitely.
So, JT, I want to start by going back to your time at Florida State. I'm curious, how does a kid as talented as you were from Macon, Georgia, end up playing his college ball at Florida State and not at University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, or someone in the SEC getting a hold of you?
You really want to know that story? I can tell you. You have to understand, when I come out of high school in 1969, it wasn't until 1969 that schools in the South were actually recruiting African Americans. So basically, the University of Georgia was called by a reporter and asked Vince Dooley at the time, and say, "Hey, Vince, why not consider having J.T. Thomas as your first African American football player?" I have an article. Vince said, "We're not quite ready yet." Bill Peterson from Florida State had read that article, and he called and said, "JT, we are ready." So I was the first African-American football player to play at FSU. I think people forget about those times and just think we just go to college. So basically, it was a different time in the late 60s. So that was a trailblazer moment, but you have to understand, I grew up in the civil rights movement, integrated my high schools when I was 14. So that was just a part of my era, part of my life, part of my transition and transforming the college football scene in the South.
Yeah, so take that a step further, JT. What was it like being the first African-American playing at Florida State?
Woo! It was interesting. You have to understand that the walls of Jim Crow were just coming down at that time. You had a lot going on in the late 60s. You had the civil rights movement. You had Vietnam, women lived, the drug movement. It was a very volatile time on campuses, but it was also transforming. So basically, you're in a situation where you're dealing with where you're the first, and so you're tearing down a lot of ideology that is false. You're dealing with segregation. You're dealing with racism. You're dealing with people that are, at that time, racist, even some teammates and coaches. I mean, I'll just be very candid. But it was part of transforming, and so you're like most trailblazers or pioneers. They suffer a lot, but we learn a lot about your character, but also the character of other people and how to survive in a very, changing, world.
So let's go to a more positive side of your history.
That wasn't all negative. Don't get me wrong. That wasn't all negative. It was a lot of positive things there, really, because the friendships you developed and the players, both black and white, that support you, and that was ever changing, definitely. So it wasn't all negative, really, definitely.
JT, I'm from Penn Hills, and I'm a huge Steelers fan, and I watched you throughout the 70s. Mm-hmm. When you look at Steeler Nation and how much we all continue to appreciate and love what you guys did for the city, for the fans, 40-plus years ago, does it surprise you how much that all still means to all of us even to this day?
Yeah, it's almost a cult. I think what happened, it was so transforming, I think, when we started the dynasty area. That was the same time that the steel mills were making an exodus out of this area. And I think the people had something to identify with was this upcoming young ball club. And so they took pride in that. You know, Pittsburgh was a steel city, smoky, nasty city. Who comes here? And I think they took pride in the ball club because we were doing things after 40 years of not winning that kind of dominating the league. And we're setting a precedence in terms of football that people had not seen. And to this day, they're still leveraging those 4 Super Bowls. If you look at the Steelers history and the legacy, what they're leveraging today, all those 4 Super Bowls, the 70s, because no one will ever do that again. So they will be able to wave that flag until Armageddon.
Bob, questions for JT?
As Chris said, JT, it's an honor to speak with you, and I'm fascinated always, JT, to talk about first-round draft picks and their experience on draft day. That was a terrific first round, 3 Hall of Famers, a couple Florida State players, and a couple of DBs. Yourself and a guy like Burgess Owen, who had a lot of success up here in New York, were probably the most successful DBs. But want to get your memories of that draft day, JT, when you got the call, and what were your expectations?
Well, let's understand, I was, Burgess and I we worked out together. He went to Miami, and Burgess and I was very similar in a lot of ways, size, talent, and was good friends. But the day I was drafted, I was asleep, really. I didn't have an agent. Matter of fact, I had flown into Houston. An agent flew us in, 2 other guys, to watch the draft. And I never had, really seen the draft or cared about it. So I decided to leave. I know he wanted to sign me. So I flew back to Florida. I flew into Jacksonville. And I thought my first time on a Greyhound bus, I thought the bus went directly to Tallahassee, but it didn't. It hit every city in between, so I'm about a 12-hour bus ride. So when I arrived in Tallahassee the day of the draft, it's probably about 5, 6 in the morning. So at that time, the draft was in the morning. I slept through the draft. About 3 o'clock, one of my teammates, a guy named David Snell, was kicking on the door, said, "Hey, T, Coach wants you." I said, so I walked down the hall to the phone. There's no cell phone. And he said, "Where in the hell have you been?" I told him the story. He said, "Get your butt down to the TV station. You're the number 1 draft choice of the Pittsburgh Steelers." So I slept through the draft, had no agent, and never had talked to the Steelers. Back then, information wasn't shared. So I thought I was going to Dallas, Miami, Green Bay. I never seen a Pittsburgh Steelers scout. Never had a phone call from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Had no idea, they weren't a great team until Franco's immaculate reception that December following the draft. So, right before the draft. So, Pittsburgh wasn't on my mind. So it was a great experience. Like I say, Pittsburgh, my God, who are they? Except the immaculate reception was the first thing I knew about Pittsburgh.
And your introduction to the NFL, obviously, incredible coaching, JT, with guys like Chuck Noll and Bud Carson. Every guy we have talked to on this show that has played for Bud Carson, either as a head coach or a defensive coordinator, JT said the guy was beyond a genius. Wanted to get your opinion on him since he was your first defensive coordinator.
Yeah, Bud was a genius. Bud orchestrated the steel curtain defense, and just amazing strategist. And really, the biggest thing that they did there, with that strategy, they allowed us to be ourselves and play within that scheme. And that's what made the Steelers so unique. They took your talent and mold your talent into a process. So really, our team was based on a lot of talent that was natural, but the scheme and the demands for the knowledge of the game was incredible. You had to study. It was one of those situations where your conditioning was superb. I think back then we were in better condition than most teams because of the type of conditioning and stretching that we did. We was into flexibility and power lifting before most teams even got into it, and we was into a type of condition, almost what track people would do. So Chuck Noll was a heavy game in that, and he too was a great coach. But it was just an amazing the genius of Bud Carson. We just were more prepared and mentally and physically, and really we at the point sometimes we had one defense you've heard of. It was called Stunt 4-3 Cover C, and it was kind of a defense that was a bailout defense. It was kind of like a secret weapon, and Chuck would call this. Whenever we got in trouble, he would come down to the defense, very tight-lip walking, and we knew what it was. It was Stunt 4-3 Stack Over Cover C, and it was the defense primarily where you take your guy out. It was 11 on 11, and we would stay in it. We wouldn't come out of it, and it was a defense that took us mentally to a kind of a crazy zone. We loved to hear it, but at the same time, you knew that you were locked in. You had to kind of wipe out the enemy type coverage. So it was that, seriously, and you see the guys, Stunt 4-3 Cover C, you were locked in. And Chuck would come down and say, Bud, write them off. And that meant lock in, take your guy out, whatever, by any means necessary. Yeah.
And JT, every year after 1973, the AFC seemed to come down to the Steelers and the Raiders in the AFC Championship game. And your interception in the 1974 AFC Championship game really sealed that victory for the Steelers. Talk about what it was like being a part of that rivalry with the Raiders and where that play ranks for you in your career highlights.
Well, obviously, the play ranks pretty high because obviously that's the first year going into our first AFC Championship game and in terms of winning and going to the Super Bowl. But the Raiders were a very, very forceful, threatening. They call us dirty, but they were a dirty team. And typically when we played the Raiders, the following week we practiced in shorts. It was a physical just beat down, and they were great. There's no doubt about it. They were just as good as we were for the most part, and it's a game. We look forward to them, and a lot of us friends, but in spite of that, they were physical. And as you know, the game has changed since then. And part of the change is because the way we played and the way they played the game. It was just a very physical game, and they were well coached. They had all pros on both sides. We had all pros on both sides. And those type of games you don't see anymore for the most part. I call it real football where guys tackle, where today, you can't tackle. You have to kiss them and lay them down because they may find you, So I wouldn't have any money today if I played today. You can't tackle nobody, T. You have to, hug them and kiss them and lay them down softly,
JT, you guys go to your first Super Bowl that season against the Vikings down in New Orleans, a huge defensive struggle. You guys really shut out the Vikings offense, right? The only points they scored came off of a blocked punt. You guys pick off Tarkington 3 times in that game. Gave up a total of 119 yards to the Vikings offense that day. Talk about what you remember about that game.
Well, what I remember was all pre-game. Really, the game with the Vikings was actually won in the tunnel before the game. I remember down in Tulane Stadium there in New Orleans, it was drizzling, and during warm-up. So in the tunnel before introduction, we were standing on one side of the tunnel, and here the Minnesota Vikings, probably 10 feet, to our right, and to us, you can imagine these are the purple people eaters, people that we had seen in high school and college, our heroes, and we were always saying, "What the hell are we doing here with these guys?" They looked like real Vikings. They looked 8 feet tall. Most of them had beards, and the rain had got into the beards, so they looked like real Vikings with snow on their face, And we were standing there intimidated. We had in the tunnel that day 12 men, and the 12th man was fear. Really, it was so quiet in that tunnel you could hear a cockroach piston. Excuse my terminology. But what happened, Glenn Edwards, the free safety, the last guy to be introduced, he was standing in the back of the tunnel, last one in line with his arms folded, very upset. We didn't know why Glenn was upset. But what happened, one of the Vikings players, one of their teammates from college, had refused to speak to him during warm-ups. and Glenn was upset. So as we stood in this quiet tunnel, Glenn standing back with his arms folded, legs spread, and he asked a question. He bellowed out this question, what he said. He said, "Do y'all know what?" I mean, it echoes. Everybody looked back at Glenn. And he said, "We're going to kick your blankety-blink." At that point in time in the tunnel, Joe Green breaks rank, walks over looking at people, Lambert biting into his gum, Dwight White commenced talking about people's mother, and Ernie Holmes said, "I'm going to hurt somebody." At that point in time, before introduction, we knew we had won the game. So that was the most exciting moment for a young team like us, because we figured we had them then. Initially, we were afraid, but when Glenn ever spoke out, it broke that fear, and we came back to that, I guess, Beau, Gene, and Bellowing Pittsburgh Steelers team that we were. So we had won that game in the tunnel, and we knew it.
And JT, you come back the next season and you beat the Cowboys in the Super Bowl this time, and you had an interception off Staubach in that game in the third quarter. I got to imagine that's running on a JT Thomas highlight reel somewhere.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Another great team. Roger Staubach, and he had Tony Dorsett, and it was that was a tough game with the Cowboys. We're playing with some of the best, but we had that number, and really it was a game that really, obviously, Lynn Swan had the great game there, but it was a defensive struggle. And, again, we prevailed. I think the Dallas game, it's when we came to maturity that year, the second year. The first year, we weren't sure, even after the season, had we really won a Super Bowl. It was kind of, did we win? We was questioning ourselves, did we go to the Super Bowl? But I think we came to Dallas was a year of maturity, and I think at that point we peaked, and I think that was the game that really kind of solidified us as a dynasty. Really, that Super Bowl, definitely.
And JT, there's something I've never understood about that game. Dallas scores with just under 2 minutes remaining, and they tried the onside kick, but Moon Mullins recovers that, and the Steelers get the ball at the Dallas 42, up by 4. But Chuck decides to run the ball 4 straight times. They get no yardage, and they hand the ball right back to the Cowboys at the 41 with 1:22 left. Now, I know Bobby Walden had mishandled a punt early in the game. But for Chuck, was he that afraid that the punt could get blocked, that he figured his chances were better, giving you guys, putting the defense back on there, making the Cowboys go 59 yards to win the game versus Walden getting the opportunity to punt the ball?
Yeah, Chuck, you have to think about Chuck's whole scheme of winning his defense. And he felt that even when the offense wasn't scoring, he would come say, "Defense, you guys got to get the ball. Offense sucks. You guys got to score." I mean, Chuck Noll had a way of communicating that Chuck really controlled your mind. Chuck had us thinking that we were always going to win. I mean, it wasn't a game to Chuck. It was like the call in the locker room was showtime. It was a show for the fans. So it was something to do to get over with his pre-game speech. He said, "Okay, guys, let's go out there and give the fans their money worth." So, yeah, he trusted the defense. Chuck had a template for winning Super Bowls, and we knew that. Chuck, and I noticed from observing him, to win a Super Bowl, there's a basic template. I can pick the Super Bowl every year. And the basic template, according to Chuck's scheme, was that offensively, you have to have 2 all-pro wide receivers. You must have 1 all-pro running back, 1 all-pro quarterback. If you don't have that, forget about it. Defensively, you got to have a front 4 or a front 7 that control the line of scrimmage, and you must have 2 defensive backs that are all-pro. That is the template. That is the prototype to win a Super Bowl. If you look around and see who wins Super Bowl, that's what teams have. Most teams will win. If you don't have that, you don't win it. And so defensively, we had 11 all-pros on defense. So why wouldn't he trust his defense? You couldn't afford 11 all-pros on defense today. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, Chuck trusted the defense to score. to stop anybody from scoring. Yeah.
So, JT, before we let you go, what are you doing now?
Well, I've been in the restaurant business most of my life. I went from after football. My first restaurant, believe it or not, was a Chinese restaurant, one of the first food courts. And from there, I did a few Burger Kings, but primarily I spent most of my career developing Applebee's in western central Pennsylvania. Larry Brown and I did Applebee's for about 20-some years. After we brought Applebee's to Pennsylvania, and we developed southwestern central Morgantown area for about 20-some odd years, and I got out of it. And now I'm in the coffee business. I'm with a local chain called Crazy Mocha, and I'm helping them franchise. A friend of mine named Ken Zeff founded the company and expanded it. So I came along since I've been in franchising, and I'm like the first franchisee, so I'm franchising Crazy Mocha. So I'm doing what I've been doing most of my life, putting food in people's mouth or in drinks.
So, JT, how can our listeners stay up to date with all the things you're doing or follow you, whether it's online or over social media?
Well, social media, I'm on Facebook, or you can go to Crazy Mocha, the Hill District location, and you'll find me on there. Matter of fact, you might run into Joe Green or Franco Harris on the Crazy Mocha Hill District location, yeah. But I'm there on Facebook as JT, and also there with Crazy Mocha Hill District location, yes.
Well, JT, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be a part of the show. So many questions that Bob and I would love to get your insights and memories on. We hope you'll come back and join us again sometime. It's been great having you.
Just send me a smoke signal, my friend. I'll be glad to.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, JT. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to having you back on the show again real soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Take care. That is former Steelers Pro Bowl defensive back JT Thomas. And Bob, really, I mean, I could have gone on probably the whole show with JT and the questions and the memories and the stories and all of that. But, great getting back to the top. First African-American player to play at Florida State. What an amazing thing.
Amazing where that program has gone since then. And, again, it's just an honor to speak with any of those old Steelers, Chris. And like you said, you have 11 All-Pros. It's just phenomenal. I'm looking down the rosters of the teams while you're speaking with them, and just mind-boggling how guys like him who didn't get into the Hall of Fame were kind of under the radar, but they never have any kind of bitterness because of the Super Bowl ring. So an incredible cog in those machines. Great to speak with him.
Yes, it was. All right, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We'll get to Tony on the other side of this quick station break.
You're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with Chris Mascaro and Bob Lazari, where NFL legends live on. Back to you, boys.
It's him. He's alive.
And now back with us on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins to talk more about his Super Bowl experience and help us make our Super Bowl picks. Hey, Tony, how are you tonight, my friend?
Hi, Tony.
Doing fantastic. How you doing, Chris and Bob?
Really good. Thank you, Tony. So, Tony, just a couple of quick memories from you about your Super Bowl experience back in '86. I wanted to get your thoughts. Here we are. It's Thursday night. So, looking at, if you were back on Thursday night, leading into that Super Bowl Sunday, what did you guys have left to do on Friday and Saturday before the game?
Friday was really just like a walkthrough practice. Well, not really a walkthrough. We would have on the helmets, and that's pretty much it. Just going over the minor things and everything down to the detail. Really just getting everything in order as far as what plays we're going to run. The script, we would have a script that we would come out in the first half, or also in the second half, the script that we would run, go over 2-minute offense and different things like that. And but it was pretty much a relaxed day. Nothing too hard, or nothing going on that was on the field that was that'll get you all tired out or anything like that.
And Tony, we've talked before about your starting quarterback that year, Tony Eason, and he really struggled at the beginning of the game. 0 for 6, got sacked 3 times, and then he got pulled in favor of Steve Grogan. Was it a surprise to you guys that Easton struggled, or did you guys know going in that, you know what, we better have Grogan ready?
Well, I mean, Steve had got hurt. Steve had got hurt part of that season, and Tony came in and played well throughout that year, and also into the playoffs. We went on the road. We played against the Jets. Went out to LA, beat them. Went down to Miami, beat them. We had all the confidence in the world in Tony. But the thing about it was, once the game started and the Chicago Bears defense sacked Tony a few times, you could kind of see that he was kind of shaken up a little bit. Didn't have the confidence that he had. We didn't offensive line didn't give him the protection that he was used to, and he got happy feet, and Steve had to come in and take over.
Bob, questions for Tony?
And Tony, about that Super Bowl loss, I mean, we all know it was not a good day for New England fans up here. They still talk about it, even though they've won so many. They still talk about things like that they've lost. But, that was a tough day. And I was just wondering, as a member of that team, Tony, would it have been any easier if you guys lost maybe 28-21? Was the blowout a problem with you guys?
Not really. I think the blowout kind of like took the edge off a little bit. The big thing for us was, it was the New England Patriots' first time ever going to a Super Bowl. Nobody thought we were going to get there. Like I said, we were a wild card on the road for 3 weeks, and nobody thought we were going to beat Miami down in Miami. And once we beat Miami down in Miami, we were pretty psyched up, and we thought we could definitely play with the Chicago Bears and give them a game. We were underdogs, of course, again going into the game. And it's kind of funny, a lot of years after that, I had one of my golf tournaments, and Raymond Berry was at the golf tournament, and Stanley Morgan was there, Irvin Fryer, Steve Rogan was there, and we were all at dinner, and we were just talking about old times, and Raymond Berry said something that I never forget. He said that we were outmatched. The Chicago Bears defense was before its time. They had this defense that was called the 46 defense, and man, that defense was something terrible. And the biggest thing is they had the players that could play it. They had Refrigerator up front, Dent on the end, McMichaels, and Wilbur Marshall, Mike Singletary. They had some players on that defensive team to run that scheme, and that was kind of the first ever 46 defense that I saw anyway at that time back in the 80s. So that defense that they had, man, was pretty special. But the special part about it, they had the players that could play that 46 defense.
And Tony, we talk a lot about how much of a show the Super Bowl is now, and the hype, and a lot of the media blitz down there. I'm just wondering, it was nothing like it is now back then, but when you had some downtime before the last game and the Super Bowl, how did you spend it? I mean, a lot of guys I know they like to listen to music a lot. How did you spend any downtime?
Well, downtime. The great part about that Super Bowl week, our families were there, and so the downtime was spending with your families. I have a big family, so I had to get a whole lot of tickets for the Super Bowl down in New Orleans. But it was good seeing my family and seeing and having them share something that was something every football player or NFL player dreams about playing in the Super Bowl, and I got that opportunity, and I got to share with my family, and that was really special to me. My mom and dad was there, my brothers and sisters, and man, we just had a great time in our downtime. The crazy part about it was all through the week that when we got down there, we had curfew. We had to be in at 11 o'clock in our rooms. We would be coming in at 10:30, and the Chicago Bears will be going out at 10:30. They didn't have curfew.
The secret to winning, I guess.
So that was kind of funny. We be coming in, you know, we don't want to miss curfew, and we see these guys going out because their hotel was actually pretty much really close to our hotel. I'm almost thinking that we might have been in the same hotel, but I'm not too sure about that. But I know we saw them going out while we were coming in.
All right, Tony, so let's get into the game on Sunday. The Patriots are a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under is 48.5. So, Tony, I know you're about to shock the world and pick the Eagles to win, right?
I see you with that Eagles jersey on, too, man. What's going on with that?
Support my man Kevin Turner and the Eagles. Got to throw my support to the Eagles, Tony. Can't have the Patriots win in the 6th.
I'll put it this way, Chris. I think it's going to be another great game. I really feel that way. Philly has a great defense, and they have a great rushing attack too. You know, Garrett Blunt and back there running the ball, and I just think that we just need to put some pressure on Foles, get him pressured a little bit, and I just think his you know, not having that, you know, he hasn't been in one of these games before, and Brady has been in quite a few. I think we're going to pull it out again, and I think it will be a close game. But of course, the Patriots will be champions again, and I'm going 28-21 Patriots.
Okay, Bob, who are you going with?
I think Tony makes a great point, Chris, about the pressure on Foles. You know, if you look at Foles, the people are talking that he doesn't have too much postseason experience, but what he does, he's very, very accurate. And if you give him time to throw, he's going to be almost a 70% thrower. He can be that accurate at times. So I think, you know, we hear about Gronkowski and Brady, and I'm on all sides of the special. I think the game seems like a little bit of a cop-out, but the game's probably going to be won in the trenches. It's either going to be about if they can pressure Foles or if the offensive line of the Patriots can hold off that good defensive front of Philadelphia. And I think they will. I think the Patriots, you know, it's amazing. They've won so much, but this one, it just seems that there's a little more pressure on them, a little bit more to win because of the exodus of the coaches, Chris, you know. They're going to lose both of their coordinators, and that's not to say that they won't be good, but that was a major part of the success for a long time. So, and you just don't know, you know, Brady, as good as he's as old as he is, but not showing any signs. But it's just the time of the time. I just think they want to go out with these guys in a big way. I think they have so much experience in this game, the guys that have been through it, and of course, the X factor is always and always will be Belichick. I could see a game like Jacksonville, maybe them getting off a little shaky start, but they make the adjustments at halftime to come roaring back. And I'm going to pick 31-24 New England, Chris.
All right. Well, guys, I'm going to go the opposite way. And our good friend Russell Baxter put out an article this week on fansided.com with 5 reasons why the Eagles are going to win. And what he wrote made a lot of sense to me. So here are the reasons that Russell put out there, and I'm getting on the bandwagon with him. They've got a pair of former Patriots who were cast-offs, and LeGarrette Blount and Chris Long. So they're going to have a little extra motivation to stick it to their former team. The second reason is the Eagles' defensive front, right? The Eagles gave up the 4th fewest points in the league this year and only 31 offensive scores in 16 games, so roughly 2 a game. They also allowed the fewest rushing yards per game at 79. Not that, you know, you ever want to put it all over on Tom Brady, right? Because no one ever wants to face Tom Brady, you know, when that's the only thing that the Patriots have to go for themselves. It's not like that's a great win for you to put it on Brady's shoulders. But, you know, if you can make a team one-dimensional, you got a better chance to win the game. The third reason is their 3-headed rushing monster with Blunt, Jay Ajayi, and Corey Clement. The Eagles were the 3rd best rushing offense in the league this season, and the Patriots defense was 20th against the run. Fourth reason is the Eagles head coach and Doug Peterson. The reason being he comes from Andy Reid's coaching tree, and we know that Andy Reid hasn't had the best postseason success, but he has had some success against the Patriots. And we all know Chiefs beat the Patriots earlier this season in Week 1. They also beat the Patriots a couple of seasons ago on a Monday night when Doug Peterson, oh by the way, was the Chiefs offensive coordinator. So he knows what to do. And then Bob, to your point, is Nick Foles, right? Again, very short playoff resume. But he started 3 playoff games, and in those games he's completed 75% of his passes for 793 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. So if he can continue to make plays, not turn the ball over, I think the Eagles got a real good chance here. So I'm going to go, against the odds, and I'm going to pick the Eagles to win this game. Again, close one like you guys think. I'm going to take the Eagles 27-24 to get it done. Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners about all the great things you do to bring kids to college.
Come on, Chris. I can't believe you said that, man.
Come on, Tony. I can't take the Patriots can't win a 6th Super Bowl. I can't be on that bandwagon. They got to stay behind the Steelers. Stay behind. Keep your 5. So go Eagles.
TonyCollinsFoundation.org. What we're doing, man, we're going on our 10-year anniversary this year. We're just helping as many kids as possible, helping them off to college. Any way we can help kids, man, that's what we want to do, give back. So TonyCollinsFoundation.org.
There you go. Tony, take care, my friend. We look forward to breaking it down with you next week, and hopefully a big Eagles win and have you explain what went wrong with the Patriots. That's what I'm going for.
Yes, sir. You guys
take care, Tony. That's former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. We've got our next guest, Chris Washington, hanging on the line. We're going to get to Chris on the other side of this quick station break.
Hear NFL legends, players, coaches, and media members from around the country, sharing their insights and stories with us year-round. Here on Thursday Night Tailgate.
And now joining us on Thursday Night Tailgate is former Bucs linebacker Chris Washington. Let me give you some background on Chris. He is from Jackson, Mississippi. Played his college ball at Iowa State, where he was a 4-year letterman. In 1981, he was awarded the Dury Moss Award for being the most outstanding newcomer. In 82, he won the school's Alfred Ullman Award for being the junior who displayed leadership and academic excellence. 83, he was recognized as the team's most outstanding defensive player. He set the school record for most tackles in a season with 168 and in a career with 457. Led the team in tackles 3 straight seasons from 1981 to 1983. He was inducted into the Cyclones Hall of Fame in 2009. He was a 6th-round draft pick in 1984 by the Tampa Bay Bucs, and he played in the league from 84 to 1990 with the Bucs, 49ers, and Cardinals, and we're excited to have him with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Chris and Bob here. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Chris.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. How's everything going?
Very good. Thank you, Chris. So, Chris, I want to start off by going back to your time at Iowa State. Prior to you getting there, I was looking back at the rivalry between Iowa and Iowa State. It was pretty one-sided. Yeah. Iowa had won 18 of the previous 24 meetings, 8 of the last 10. But you helped Iowa State win 3 in a row from 80 to 82. What do you remember about being a part of that big rivalry?
The coach I had, Coach Corey, he was our defensive coordinator, and he was a linebacker coach at that time. He was just very thorough, and we happened to have a good group of players at that time, and everyone did their job. We played well against them, and if we didn't win any other game, if we lost every other game, that's fine as long as we beat Iowa. That was our motto.
Bob, questions for Chris?
Chris, I want to talk about your introduction to the NFL in '84. That very first training camp. John McKay, the coach. I didn't realize Wayne Fonts was the defensive coordinator. Yes. Take me back to those memories when you first arrived there, and what that first training camp was like.
Well, the first camp, I realized right away after the first couple of days that the head coach was not really. He wasn't really involved in everything that was going on. He gave it to his assistant coaches to run. He just wasn't too involved in what was going on. And as I said, no one took us seriously. So it was hard to keep the spirits up with the team. But we had good young players. Hugh Green, I got a chance to play with Hugh Green and Leroy Selman. So I learned from a lot of guys, and it was just the youth of the team. We just didn't have, we just weren't consistent enough. That's the main thing in the NFL, being consistent, and we didn't have that at that time. But as you see, that has turned around as well. But it was a great place to live, and had a good time trying to get the organization to be a little more successful. But it didn't happen at that time, but it did happen later on. So.
And I wanted to ask you more about Leroy Selman, Chris, the member of the Selman brothers family there. They were all very talented, but this guy, of course, played his whole career in Tampa Bay, was out of football by the time he was 30, but had done enough to earn Hall of Fame status. Tell us more about this guy, what type of player and what kind of teammate he was.
Leroy was a great leader. He didn't, he wasn't trying to intimidate anyone. He was the quietest guy. You wouldn't even know he would be there. But when we put on our uniforms and went on the field on Sundays, he was a totally different person. And he was always trying to build. He was always trying to help the younger guys become comfortable with what we're doing. He was a great leader in the community as well as with the team. We just didn't have the consistency that we needed to be successful at that time. But he was loved in the neighborhoods throughout the league. He was well respected, great pass rusher, and I just learned a lot just watching him go through his drills and go through his assignments each day during the games, practice. I was lucky to have a chance to play with him.
And expand on a little bit of that, Chris. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I grew up a huge Hugh Green fan. And curious just to, you mentioned him a moment ago. Curious to get your memories of playing alongside of Hugh.
He was a madman, but it was controllable madness. And just watching him, just watching his technique on the field, I learned a lot just watching him in the films every week. And then, unfortunately, in the fourth week, I think it was the fourth week of my rookie year, we were leaving practice, and Hugh Green had just bought a brand new Corvette. And he was driving, he was going over an overpass. He hit something, and his car went airborne. And he went over into the ditch. So I got out of the car along with other players that were behind on the highway. We go down, we walk over to the car. We ran to the car. We get to the car, and he has a pole going through his leg that went through his leg. I'm telling you, Hugh Green looked up at me. He laughed for a second. He said, "Okay, rookie, it looks like you're about to get your chance to go play." And then he passed out, and then they took him to the hospital and went from there. He had a great attitude. He was a madman on the field, though. So he was a great teacher as well.
So, Chris, how can our listeners stay up to date with what you're doing? Is there a way for them to follow you, whether it's online or over social media?
Yeah, they can, washington.thomas@gmail.com.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come and be a part of the show. We hope you'll come back and do it again sometime. It's been great spending some time with you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it, and let's get ready for that game on Sunday. Take it easy.
There you go.
Thank you, Chris. Take care.
All right, Chris. Take care. All the best to you and your family. We look forward to catching up with you again sometime soon.
Okay, thank you. Take it easy.
Good night.
Thanks, Chris. That is former Iowa State and Bucs linebacker Chris Washington, and you go back and look at what he achieved, particularly at Iowa State, Bob, and great compliment to him from Mike Stensrud. But a guy who's in the Iowa State Hall of Fame, career leader in tackles, most tackles in a season, had an unbelievable career there, and then did some good things when he was with the Bucs. Unfortunately, it had to be awfully difficult, Bob, being a member of those Bucs teams that for the most part won 2 or 3 games for a very long time.
Yeah, that 6-10 rookie season he had under McKay, Chris, that was the best season in his regime. But you're right. I mean, very interesting guy talking about his basketball career. Didn't play football till late, and my goodness, what he accomplished in just such a short time. And like we talked about, out of football at age 28, 29, and that's the problem, Chris, for a lot of guys, and we heard it right from the horse's mouth tonight. That was pretty interesting stuff, but he's giving back, and that's what a lot of these guys continue to do. Great guy.
Yes, he was. All right, we've got our next guest, Paul Alexander, hanging on the line. We'll get to Paul right after this quick station break.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
And we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and joining us and making his 16th appearance with us on the show is AT&T Sportsnet host and TNT guest Hall of Famer, Paul Alexander. And Paul is one of the best sports hosts on TV or radio anywhere in the country. Pittsburgh sports fans can hear and see Paul hosting the pre- and post-game shows for the Penguins now. The Pirates here very soon on AT&T Sportsnet Pittsburgh. Also covers the Steelers. He's been a fantastic contributor with us here on the show as well, and we are honored that he is back with us again tonight. Hey, Paul, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hi, Paul.
Oh, gentlemen, how are you?
Wow, we're fantastic. How are you, my friend?
Oh, never better. You know, it's wind chill, I think, below zero tonight. It started the day as like a wet rain. Now it's turning into a mix. You know, the really unbelievable wintry mix. I mean, does it get any better than that?
Indeed. So, Paul, we haven't spoken since the Steelers lost to the Jags in the divisional round, and that was as poorly a coached game as I think I've seen in a very long time, particularly on defense. Curious to get your thoughts. What happened? The defense was so good, and then it just didn't it never showed up for that game.
Well, you know, where do you start? I mean, we're in an era now in the NFL where, you know, defense doesn't win championships anymore. It just doesn't. So when you put up 42 points, it's real easy to say, how in God's name do you lose that game? It has to be the defense. But when you look at the fact that the offense really gave up 14 points and contributed to the cause, you know, that Jacksonville was really challenged to put together offensively, as much as the defense did not get any pressure on Blake Bortles, did not force the issue as they should have, it's still, to me, when you know you clearly have, I mean, did you see the Pro Bowl? I don't watch Pro Bowls, by the way. I did. That would be against everything that I believe in. But I did see how many Steelers were there. Excuse me. And they were all basically on the offensive side. I mean, the entire offensive line. Then you have, you know, the best receiver in football, arguably the best running back in football, a future Hall of Famer at quarterback. You simply have to find a way to outscore the opposition. And in the meantime, what you can't do is throw a bad pick and have a strip sack or any of those things that, if you allow those things to happen, you allow the other team to win. And while I'm certainly not going to defend what was really a ridiculously poor defensive effort, when you realize how you're stacked talent-wise offensively, you simply can't make those mistakes. And you want to look at the team that's representing the AFC in the Super Bowl, you know what they don't do? They don't make those two mistakes that cost you that game. Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots, as much as they're despised, and I think rightfully so, they don't make those mistakes that prevent you from going to a Super Bowl. They just don't.
And to take that a step further, Paul, speaking of mistakes, when you look at the 2 fourth-down calls, when they needed less than a yard and they run a sweep to the right and then they try to throw a pass on the second one, Was that Haley outthinking himself, or was it something else?
You know what? I watched Drew Brees in a playoff game call his own quarterback sneak, and he's about 5'11", maybe 200 pounds. Ben Roethlisberger is 6'5", about 260 pounds. And whenever, there's a play that kind of like has like success that wasn't really called for, Ben will say that, well, AB and I made eye contact at the line of scrimmage, and we decided to go ahead and do a little something a little different. But whenever Ben doesn't on, 4th and a foot, 4th and a yard, call his own number and, just take his body forward for a first down, he puts it on Todd Haley. Do you ever see Tom Brady, by the way, he says he simply touches his center's rear end, he centers the ball, and they go without telling anyone else. It's that easy to get that half a yard, that foot, that yard, whatever, on a quarterback sneak. So what really infuriates me is how Ben Roethlisberger will throw, and he basically got rid of Todd Haley by basically throwing him under the bus. When a play works, Ben will say that he decided to audible at the line of scrimmage, call something that maybe wasn't sent in from the sideline. When it works, it was Ben deciding it was a good idea. When it doesn't work, Todd Haley didn't call the right play. I'm sorry. I'm tired of that. And the most talented offensive team in the AFC is not representing the AFC in the Super Bowl because they're not collectively together. They're not on the same page. They're individuals. They're not a team. And it's just really, I think, reprehensible. And Chris, as you pointed out, it's a horribly coached game. And when you find out that your star running back didn't bother to show up for the walkthrough before the game, showed up late, in terms of when you're supposed to be there on game day, is Le'Veon Bell. That's horrible leadership. That stuff is simply not acceptable. And winning is a culture. Winning is a mindset. Winning is an attitude. Winning is playing for one another. Winning is when I'm a part of this. I'm not everything. It's not about me. It's about the team. And the Steelers right now are simply watching the Super Bowl because they weren't a team. They didn't play for one another. They weren't led in a way inspired them to be just a sum of the part. No, they wanted to be everything. And all the drama, and every single week, one thing, if you're in the sports talk industry in the Pittsburgh area, you're in heaven because every single day something else comes out that is basically ludicrous because Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots simply do not tolerate that nonsense. And that's why an inferior talent, as far as the team is concerned, will represent the AFC in the Super Bowl on Sunday, as opposed to a team that was built and designed and crafted to be all that. And that's what, when we're parents and we're growing up playing sports, the most talented team doesn't always win. That's why you play the game, right? Isn't that why you go ahead and line it up and play the game? Because if you can be well coached and be disciplined and be selfless, care more about the team than you care about yourself, you have a common goal, well, you can go ahead and shock the world. You can beat Georgetown and get beat by Villanova. I mean, some of the great upsets that we've ever witnessed have happened because of a collective mindset where the team is more important than the individual. Bill Belichick somehow, some way makes that happen each and every year. I mean, I don't know who's going to win on Sunday. I know Philadelphia's more talented. I have a good feeling New England's going to win.
So to that end, Paul, and I've been saying this for the last few years, the Steelers feel like a collection of me guys. AB's a me guy. Le'Veon Bell's a me guy. They got a bunch of me guys, not team
Correct.
guys. So to that end, right? It's like the tail wagging the dog, right? Is that a Tomlin issue that he can't get these guys to see the team over the me, or where does it ultimately fall? Because it doesn't seem like the Rooneys, don't do that, right? They don't fire coaches. We've had 3, right, in my lifetime. So where does it ultimately have to rest on trying to get these guys to be a team?
Well, I think what it takes is, you look around, and when you treat people like adults and you expect them to be responsible and respectful, you get the Steelers. If you don't tolerate any nonsense, which is Bill Belichick, you get the Patriots. So, yeah, but there's only, to me, one guy in the entire NFL that has commanded and earned the respect of these, multi-millionaire players that make a whole lot more than the coach, and realize that, you know what, if they don't, treat me right here, I'll go somewhere else. It's really the inmates running the asylum, except for in New England, where there's a culture. And I'm a good friend of Josh Miller, who punted for the Steelers and then punted for the Patriots. And he said if he had a bad day punting the football on Sunday, he knew on Tuesday he would see coming through the cafeteria a couple of free agent punters walking into Bill Belichick's office, just to let him know, if you don't get it together, you will be replaced. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. I think that's kind of a real harsh way to run a business. But you know what? It's a very effective way to run a business. And Bill Belichick doesn't care. You see him with the cutoff hoodies and the way he handles the media, go way back to Tony Dungy interviewing Mike Tomlin on Sunday Night Football well before it was decided that, the Steelers and the Patriots would play again. He talked about how Tomlin did, about how he was getting ready for the Patriots. Granted, I think we all know that's reality. You simply don't say that. You play it a game at a time. You're boring as hell, and you do not ever give anyone bulletin board material. You don't ever go beyond protocol, and the protocol is we play it one game at a time. I don't care if they're the 0-13 Cleveland Browns. If they're playing us, they're a dangerous team, and we got to worry about them and beat them on Sunday. So, yeah, the Steelers really fell into the trap of looking ahead, not being about a team, and not really being focused on the job at hand.
Bob, a couple of questions for Paul before we let him go.
Paul, I just wanted to stay right on the Tomlin thing because, again, what I saw was being a lot about coaching in the playoffs especially, but even when it was all over, Paul, all we heard from the Pittsburgh people was, look, the guy wins games. They were 13-3 this year. He's 56 games over 500 in his career, and that's their comeback. And we know, again, Paul, in this day and age, when you don't get out of that conference to the Super Bowl in 8 years, you can't solve New England. It's amazing. He's almost got Teflon quality now. Do you think it might be time? Are they just waiting for New England to lose their entire coaching staff and try to get it in one of these years?
Bob, that's a great question. And it is really hard to find fault with Mike Tomlin's record. But unfortunately, and I think Chris kind of touched on it, when you watch the dynamic of a game, and the thing I love about, being Pittsburgh born and bred, we have an incredible bevy of legendary high school coaches in this area. So we all, and this is like, we're talking like, if you're 6 or 7, you probably have a good idea of how a football game should be coached. You know how to manage the final 2 minutes of a half and the final 2 minutes of a game. And Mike Tomlin, unfortunately, with the onside kick and the other things, he has been horribly outcoached. Horribly outcoached. His time management is embarrassing on so many levels. I mean, we're talking about 13 and 14 full-time assistant coaches on most NFL staffs. And some of his challenges have been abhorrible. So, yeah, I mean, the record actually is impressive, and if you would take a look at it, but if you take a look at his game day management of a game, it's pretty bad. And there are games that you just leave out there because you didn't outcoach, or you didn't at least live up to what should be expected of an NFL head coach. But, like, where do you go from here? I mean, you win divisions, you play, in the playoffs every year for the most part. I mean, when you look at the rest of the NFL and you judge accordingly, who's better? Yeah. Who do you find that really, from a resume standpoint, or someone that you think is actually going to take you to that next level, or that coach that's going to beat the Patriots when you need to, and you look at, as much as you want to be critical of Tomlin, that idiotic, survive the ground rule in the NFL, they beat the freaking Patriots. They play, a home game. They don't have to deal with what they dealt with this year in the playoffs because they had New England beat in that game. So it's really kind of difficult to be hypercritical of Tomlin. It's just frustrating when the team that you support, the team that you follow, is more talented than the team that beat you. That's hard to do. Yeah. So immediately you go to coaching, right? Mm-hmm. That's where you go. If my team has, 15 people in the Pro Bowl, and there's no reason in the world that it should have lost to your team, you have to go to the head coach, especially when it's disciplined, when it's not being focused. So yeah, it's very difficult. I love Mike Tomlin, the human being. I mean, this guy graduated from William and Mary. He's a brilliant guy. His clock management, his game day coaching is very suspect. It truly is. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, guys. I really don't.
And just a little more of that, Paul, about Roethlisberger. You and I had this exact same conversation last year at this time. Can he come back and do it again? Well, he comes back and he basically does the same kind of statistics as he did the year before, if not a little better, Paul. And now he's another year older. He'll be 36 and a half when the next season starts. He doubted himself in a moment of weakness last year, but how much longer, I'll ask you again, how much longer can he do it?
Well, he does have 2 more years at $19 million per. And again, you hate to make sports a business, but we all know that it is. I don't think anyone in their right mind, with the ability that he still has and the proficiency in which he played, walks away from that. And you consider that his offensive line now keeps him, so clean, so upright. You have the best receiver in all of football, and Juju Smith is, one of the best rookies, we've seen in a long time at the receiver position. Martavis Bryant straightened his act out, and he is just a freak of nature at 6'4" that runs a 4.4. So I think he sticks around for at least 2 more years, which would pay him let's see, 19 million plus 19 million, that's 38 million. I think you stick around for that. When you are legitimately a Super Bowl contender, you know, for those final 2 years, why the heck would you walk away from that?
Paul, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the things you're doing, both online and over social media.
P. Alexander 44 on Twitter and on Facebook, and AT&T Sportsnet, where we're I don't know if you guys have you know, kind of noticed the Penguins, who had everyone here a little concerned that maybe they're a little worn out after a couple of straight, you know, 2 straight Stanley Cups. All of a sudden, I think they won 9 of their last 11, and they're going to make some noise down the run. So, AT&T Sportsnet is where we do our Penguins pre and post game shows, and we're not that far away from Pirate baseball. And you know what, guys? You know what I'm really happy about? That we didn't have time to talk about the Pirates.
We'll make up for it.
I tell you, Paul, and it's true. We're out of time. We've got our next guest, Beau Bock, patiently hanging on the line. But I had a lot of questions for the Pirates, so we got to get you back soon. Yeah, to get
you know
to
what?
that.
I may be busy. I may be busy the next time you want to talk about the Pirates. I might have some conflict or something.
I
God bless you guys. You're the best.
So are you, Paul. Thank you so much. We'll catch up soon, my friend.
All right. Take care. God bless you.
All right.
Good night.
See you, Paul. That's a great Paul Alexander. Again, AT&T Sportsnet Pittsburgh is where you can find Paul doing the pre- and post-game shows for the Penguins now, and like he said, soon with the Pirates. But, yeah, Bob, I got a lot of questions about the Pirates. Holy cow. It is amazing. It's unfortunate it worked out that way, but we got to get him back soon.
Yeah, next time it'll be no Steeler talk, just Pirates.
Yes. All right, now back with us here on Thursday Night Tailgate is the Dean of Atlanta Sports Talk Radio and a member of our 2017 Guest Hall of Fame class, Mr. Beau Bock. Beau has been a tremendous friend of the show over the last several years. Bob and I always look forward to when we get to have Beau as part of the show. He's been the Dean of Atlanta Sports Talk Radio going back to 1973. No one knows Atlanta sports or the suffering of Georgia sports fans better than Beau does, and his insights and knowledge are second to none here in this town, and we're excited that he is back with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Beau, Chris, and Bob, thanks for being patient and coming back on the show.
Well, thanks, guys. Good to be with you.
So, Beau, we got to start first by getting your thoughts on the Falcons. You know, a year ago right now, right, they're preparing for the Super Bowl, and
Chris,
you know, you've been telling us that team overachieved. But you know, here we are. It's a year later. Unfortunately, they didn't make it back. Your thoughts on what went wrong for the Falcons?
Well, you know what? That's what we can't get to the bottom of. I have lots of thoughts on what went wrong, but the only thought that matters is what does Arthur Blank think. And as we do in this town, we never wrap up a season. We never said what went right, what went wrong. You know, last year we beat the dung out of the Patriots, for crying out. And just like Paul was saying, by the way, I agreed with just about everything he said. You know, that's why I love the Eagles this year. And this is going to be one hell of a Super Bowl. But getting back to what you said, there's been no resolution to what happened this year. I can tell you, you know, you had an offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator, even though Dan runs the defense. The offensive coordinator, Steve Sarkisian, happens to share the same agent with Dan Quinn. And, you know, it's absurd. He had a terrible year. It took him the 13th week to realize that Devontae Freeman was a pretty good and pretty effective and pretty dangerous pass catcher. And then it took him 15 weeks to realize that we had a kid by the name of Taylor Gabriel on the club, who, by the way, was kind of like the electric bolt that took us down the stretch a year ago. I mean, he's just a sensational receiver with scintillating speed, who stretches the defense and allows things to happen. Now, we never got any type of rhythm like that this year offensively. Defensively, we were not moving as a unit as we were a year ago. So those are two things. Or one thing was it the change in coordinators? Secondarily, the mistake a coach can make, and when you guys were talking about Tim Tomlin, I was thinking about Dan Quinn because he lost that Super Bowl with just a goofy call down the stretch after the Patriots had made such a great comeback, but we were still in control of the game. But we handed them the game. It's really Dan Quinn. Did he make a mistake of trying to pick up this year where we left off in the Super Bowl, or did he start all over again? And of course, you have to start all over again. A football team, a competitive team in any sport, cannot pick up where they left off. You have to start right at the beginning. So we don't know. That's why I'm interested. I'd love to see something in the paper. Of course, this is the worst sports media market in the country. There's not anybody saying anything here, and no one asking for, what does the owner think? What was the word the owner got from Richie McKay as to what went wrong this year? God, it's absurd when you think about it. We run the thing like a Home Depot.
And Beau, you were telling us since, after the Super Bowl last year, and then as you've joined us throughout this year, hey, last year was sort of a bonus. We weren't really supposed to be there yet. We're a young team. This is going to be our year. It wasn't our year exactly. But is this a team that you feel like, hey, it can still come around and be in a Super Bowl position a year from now? Or is this a team that's now starting to be on the decline?
I think so. First of all, the jury's out on Dan Quinn. That has yet to be resolved. Secondarily, when you miss that window and when you came so close a year ago, it's okay to be mad. But nobody was in horror over the fact that we lost that Super Bowl. I'm talking about internally, with the Falcons. I'm talking about in the locker room, up in the front office. Those guys are playing bingo. So they don't know. But next year, I really don't know. Coming out of last year, I knew we were the best team in football. I knew, if we could, just take, what we had done this year, do the same thing this year, we were going to be back in the Super Bowl and win the thing. So I don't know. I really don't know, because you don't know the dynamic that's in that locker room, and they've tightened up everything. I used to be, I was so close to the Falcons. Sometimes the guy would find me in his jock, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? But now you can't even get close. You don't know what's going on. You don't get a feel for it. We had a chance 2 years ago at establishing a culture for the first time, and that was actually 4 years ago. Smitty's last year, when I said every day on the radio that we don't practice hard, and that's why we don't play hard. We're the softest team in the league on Sunday. So right at that point, they decide to close practice to the media. That's Richie McKay, simple, just mindless stuff.
So, Beau, any concerns about Matt Ryan? Is this an offensive coordinator issue? Because when you look at Ryan, right? I mean, league MVP last season, leads the league in passer rating, was second in passing yards and in touchdowns.
Right.
Well, now this year he takes a step all the way back to sort of mediocrity, right? 15th in the league in passer rating, 20 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, so 18 fewer touchdowns, 5 more interceptions. Concerns at all about Matt Ryan, or do you look at it as this is an offensive scheme issue?
Yeah, this is definitely an offensive scheme issue. We never reached a rhythm all year, Chris. We didn't open with the run. We didn't open with the pass, come back with the run. We didn't throw the screen left and right, and then the fourth quarter we didn't run it up the gut. We had no playing personality. And last year was the first year that we could establish that. I keep saying last year, and of course I mean 2016. So that's what we established that year when we went to the Super Bowl. And now there is none. No playing personality. When you think about the Falcons, when you close your eyes, you have no image of how they move. And every team has a playing personality, every successful team. So that's going away, and that's why I said, and I keep saying, what did they tell Arthur? Well, because Arthur had to say to them, guys, unless he's too close, because he loves hanging around and coming down the sideline on Sunday and all that nonsense. But Arthur had to say to Dan Quinn and to Rich McKay and to his 27 ex-GMs he's got on staff, what happened? And I would like to know what was the answer they gave him, because no one knows.
Bob, questions for Beau?
And Beau, I want to stay on that same topic. Just like Chris said, I wanted to ask you about Matt Ryan. He the 20 touchdowns, Beau, that was the lowest total since his rookie season. And with that talent, like a Julio Jones, you would think, my goodness, Matt Ryan can throw 20 just to Julio on a good season. They're that good. But you look, Ryan just did not look good in the 2 playoff games. To me, Beau, it's kind of obvious. It's the Sarkisian effect. I mean, everything else is the same. It's a new system. Again, when you have superstars like that, those two are two of the best players in football. And you got guys Sanu and the tight end Hooper. These guys are good players. You got to make it happen, man. You really do.
And you didn't even say Taylor Gabriel, just like Steve Sarkisian did. This kid is electric. And to find Freeman, and Freeman catching balls, he's got great hands. And when he turns upfield and runs downhill, boom. They're scattered. And, we never had that all year. We didn't throw to Coleman. You get Coleman in space, and he goes the distance. There's no rhyme or reason. The guy's the best way Sarkisian can get out of this and look good is give the game to Matt at the line of scrimmage. He's a smart quarterback. His skills have not deteriorated. There was just no rhythm. And like I said, you've taken a couple of his weapons, 3 of his weapons out of the mix. I mean, how much better is the guy going to look? And as far as personnel is concerned, who's got better personnel? I mean, from 1 to 52.
It's almost mind-boggling, Beau. Like I said, going down the roster, this should have been their year. And again, now you still have guys like Jones and Matt Ryan, 32, 28 years old. I mean, they're still in their prime right now. But you get the idea that they got to make it. They got to do it pretty quick, Beau.
Yeah, if there's something rotten in Denmark, which to me the whole thing was internal. You could. The guys weren't together on the field. I don't know. Maybe they're getting tired of Dan Quinn's trying to be so hip. We're jacked and we're gonna. Come on, stop, coach. And maybe the guy. How easily the guys can get tired of a message that they don't think is authentic, and maybe that's happened. Yeah. I mean, we're a pretty sissified organization up there.
Well, let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about University of Georgia. Curious to get your thoughts. Here's another team, right, that was right there for a national championship, had a double-digit lead late in the game, and then lost. What's your thought on what happened with the Bulldogs?
Well, what happened with the Bulldogs is, I think they overachieved all year. They've got a great quarterback. They've got good receivers, but not a guy that's going to just take and go 80. Oh, well, they do with that, but they just ran out of gas. I mean, you're talking about going against a professional football team. I mean, those are the guys. Georgia should have led the South in coming out of football, coming out of the South. It should be Georgia and then Alabama. Now Georgia is competing like crazy. Kirby Smart did a fantastic job. And when you guys were talking with Paul about somebody, maybe it was Mike Tomlin or something, talking about all the mistakes he made. And everybody knows that. Everybody can kind of see that. He's not great down the stretch. But you know what he is? He's a motivator, and he's a leader, and he gets those guys going every year. And that's the toughest thing to find in a head coach. It's not the X's and O's. Everybody knows X's and O's except for Steve Sarkisian. But you know what I'm saying. Everybody's got the X's and O's quotient. What they don't have is innate leadership ability, and Tomlin does. A guy who can step into the locker room and say, guys, I need you to run through that wall before we go out there because I want to make sure we're ready. I want to make sure that these guys know what hit them came out of the West like a tornado. Just to get them going, get them nutty, get out on the field, get a quick lead, assert yourself, make the other guys submissive, and that's a football coach. Because you can hire assistants who know more X's and O's than you do, and you can hire a guy who's been good down the stretch. And it doesn't take anything away from a head coach to give that to an assistant coach who's been with a couple of maybe great guys at closing out a game. There's so many ways to do that, but what you can't do is duplicate what Tomlin does and get them going.
So, Beau, any reason to think Georgia won't be right back in the SEC title game next season?
They will be. No, it's on now. Don't forget this program has lagged further behind than any other major program in the country. I mean, when you think about what surrounds Georgia, and you think about what can be, it's only been reluctance on their part that they haven't been able to get these guys going. Kirby Smart knows. Kirby Smart came in here. He didn't come in here with one of those Vince Dooley outlooks and see if he can be doing commercials for Kroger in 40 years. No, he came in here to win and to take Georgia where it's supposed to be. I mean, I love the guy, and I was skeptical. I looked at his haircut. I thought we were getting another Bubba Watson. I didn't know what to think. And he turns out to be a tough guy and a disciplinarian and just a great leader, an organizer. Yeah, it's just super to see because Georgia has been 100 years behind. Ever since Wally Butts and before him Harry Meir. Those were the only two coaches we had until Kirby.
But we had Steve Barkowski on the show a couple of weeks ago. And Steve was talking about the missed opportunity that the Falcons had in 1980 when they finished 12-4. They had a first-round bye. They hosted the Cowboys in the divisional round and then gave up 20 points in the fourth quarter to unfortunately lose that game. Where does that Falcons team, do you think, rank as among the best Falcons teams that they've ever had?
I think very high. I mean, you when you talk about coaches not being able to run a game, Lehman Bennett was one of them. He was one of the best. In fact, he should be chairman of that group because we got up on Dallas and we sat on the ball. We sat on the ball and allowed Dallas back in the game. Meanwhile, our defense was kicking their hanky. Our defense was the heart and soul of the team. That was the beginning of all that grit split stuff. And Jerry Glanville was the whole heart and soul of this football team as the defensive coordinator from 77. Well, actually, he was the defensive backs coach in 77, 78 to 82. He was the guy. He was the Falcons. But Lehman Bennett sat on the ball, and gosh darn it, that was a great, great football team, but just didn't have that leadership ability at the very top.
Bob, one more for Beau before we let him go?
Sure, I might as well just switch it over to baseball quickly. Beau, 2 weeks, pitchers and catchers. You know, we talked last year at this time, and you had high hopes for the Braves. I think a lot of us did, but 18 games under 500, just couldn't win in the new building, et cetera. What's the state of baseball and the feeling among the fans right now, Beau?
It's kind of hovering. You know, there is no feeling. There really is no feeling. Fans don't know what to expect. You know, they don't know if this is an exhibition team, you know, which we were for so many years, and or if this is a team that's serious about competing. So there's no chatter. Nobody's anxious, you know, for the season. It's a great place for single moms to take their boys. You know, other than that, you're not going to get too much of an athletic exhibition.
So, Beau, got to get your quick thought. Who wins on Sunday?
Guys, this is going to be a classic Super Bowl because it's going to be the first RPO Super Bowl. Do you know that Philadelphia doesn't call it pass play? Every play is a run, and it becomes RPO. This is going to be the first RPO Super Bowl. And Philadelphia's going to win it, and you know why? For the same reason I loved us a year ago. I just loved our activity. I loved our intensity. I loved the way we slobber knocked everybody. And that was, you know, in 16, of course, not this past year. And that's the way I see Philadelphia. And I like Peterson. And I don't think Foles is going to fold the tent. I think he's going to be just fine. And, you know, and it's tough to go against Brady. And I mean, Brady's the best to ever dressed out. And he's beautiful to watch. Well, you know, I'm just more than anything counting on the law of averages. I just have a sense that Philadelphia is primed for this thing.
Well, before we let you go, remind our listeners how they can stay up to date with all the things you're doing online and over social media.
Yeah, it's Bock at gmail.com if you'd like to get my commentary sent to you every night. And, you know, my website is still being designed right now, but if you can send me your email address to Bock at gmail.com, I'd be happy to put you on a list. It's good stuff. It's the only stuff you hear in Atlanta.
Well, Beau, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come back and be a part of the show. Bob and I always love spending time with you, my friend. We look forward to catching up with you again, hopefully real soon.
Thanks, Chris. And you know what? The other thing is, you know, like when Chipper Jones or Dominique Wilkins are introduced, you know, they say, the Hall of Famer, Dominique Wilkins. I'm a Hall of Famer.
That's right. You're darn right you are.
I'm a Hall of Famer. Don't give me that Bock stuff. Hall of Famer, Bock.
Right.
Got to remember next time.
Yeah, please.
Take care.
Some respect. See you. Bye.
All right,
Take care, Beau. That's the great Bock. And again, he's you can find him on Twitter at Bock790 and then Bock at gmail.com. Get his newsletters. Fantastic stuff. And Bob, always so much fun having Beau as part of the show.
I love his sense of humor, but you get the passion in his voice, Chris. He cares about Atlanta sports, and like none other, for sure.
All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on our Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the Positive. Hear which players are doing great things in their communities. And then we'll wrap up the show, and we're going to do that on the other side of these words about our friends over at the Salt Creek Golf Retreat and Doubleback Winery.
If you're looking for a great place for your annual golf outing, a weekend golf getaway, or just a round of golf with your buddies, then Salt Creek Golf Retreat is just what you're looking for. Centrally located in Nashville, Indiana, just south of Indianapolis and west of Cincinnati. This challenging but fair 18-hole golf course appeals to all skill levels. and its scenic views of rolling hills and tree-lined fairways are sure to make golfing memories for years to come. Owned and operated by former Purdue and New York Giant fullback Randy Manier, Salt Creek Golf Retreat offers stay-and-play packages that include golf and a fully furnished 1- or 2-bedroom condo. After your rounds, be sure to stop by the 19th Hole Sports Bar and Restaurant for great food, fun, and drinks. Randy and his staff will treat you like family. For more information, log on to saltcreekgolf.com. That's saltcreekgolf.com. Or give them a call at 812-558-5944. Salt Creek Golf Retreat. Start making your golfing memories today. Former NFL quarterback Drew Bledsoe, owning a winery has been a long-time aspiration that would allow him to combine his passion for fine wines and love of his hometown, the Walla Walla Valley. Drew returned in 2007 to plant his original estate vineyard, McQueen, on the southern end of the Walla Walla Valley. The following year, Drew launched Doubleback, an estate-focused winery with the goal to produce world-class Cabernet Sauvignon. Since the very first release, the 2007 Cabernet Sauvignon, Doubleback has received numerous accolades, including a spot on the Wine Spectre's Top 100 list. Drew's vision, brought to life by winemaker Josh McDaniels, remains to be a premium wine experience, completely focused on quality. To further assist the vision of high quality, estate-focused wine, Drew has acquired and planted 4 estate vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley, and recently broke ground on the future home of Doubleback Winery, which will open in 2018. Drew is committed to using only the most sustainable, superlative winemaking practices to ensure that Doubleback will be one of the best bottles of wine you will drink. We invite you to learn more about Doubleback and sign up for our mailing list at doubleback.com. That's doubleback.com.
Thursday Night Tailgate, where the spotlight is always on the positive. Tune in Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time to hear your favorite NFL legends, players, and coaches sharing their stories. Now back to Chris and Bob.
I wouldn't joke about anything else that happens here tonight.
Hey, we are back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who you putting your spotlight on this week?
Well, Chris, this week we'll continue with our NFL Man of the Year award nominees, recognizing these guys, and came across a great story this week of Cameron Jordan, the defensive end of the Saints. Chris, you know, in the past we've featured various members of the Saints on the show, especially guys like Drew Brees. They do so much for the community. But I didn't know how much Jordan actually did. This is a guy, he's been around since 2011, one of the more underrated guys in the league, Chris, was just voted to his 3rd Pro Bowl, had 13 sacks this last year, had his best year. But he does his best work off the gridiron, Chris. This guy, it's amazing. I think the Saints PR people came out and said since his rookie year, this guy has participated in a community event almost every week. In fact, they could not remember a time when he did not do an appearance or something, maybe multiple appearances during the week. And he's involved with their literacy visits, Chris, where he'll go into schools and talk about his message of reading. And he does a lot of the Play 60 work, which gets kids out there exercising for an hour every day. Major contributor of the Character Playbook Initiative. That means he goes in the summer and works with kids at these patrol summer camps, and an awful lot of motivational speaking in that area to both kids at the youth and high school level. But anytime, and every teammate backs him up, anytime a teammate needs him, Chris, either to make a speech or to join them, he does not refuse. And in addition to all of that, he spends a lot of the off seasons. He goes on these NFL USO tours where he's very, very supportive of the military members on the front lines, and also the support staff, which we don't hear much about. But amazing player on the gridiron, Chris, and what he does off, very, very impressive. And, of course, as we've said before, any of these guys should put their names in a hat and pick them for the NFL Man of the Year. But the Saints nominee gets my vote this week. That's Cameron Jordan.
And that's a great story, Bob, and all the great things that he is involved with and doing. So kudos to him and to the Saints and all the great stuff that Cameron Jordan's doing. Great story. Bob, this week I'm going to put the spotlight on Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Andre Roberts. He is this year's NFL Salute to Service Award winner. So you know how we like to support our military veterans, the Armed Forces Radio Network, and great support from our service veterans. So kudos to all of them, and thank you to all of them for all the things that they have done for all of us. But as you pointed out, what Cameron Jordan does, you know, Andre Roberts is recognized for what he has done to help support and promote the military and our soldiers. He comes from a dual military background. Both of his parents are Army veterans. So he goes out and does camps at military bases across the country all off season. Did 11 of them last year at 11 different military bases. So he appeals to the kids that are living there on base, and you know, obviously those around it as well. Brings them on site to go through a bunch of camps for them. But he also does local VA hospital visits and participates in events like Fishing with the Falcons, where veterans spend a day fishing with someone from the team. He also selected the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, also known as TAPS, as the organization that he wanted to honor this year in the My Cause, My Cleats Day. So, you know, kudos to Andre Roberts for what he does to help our military veterans, to help the kids, military parents, and going to the different bases all off season long, take care of those folks and put on those camps and all the great things that he's doing to have a positive impact. Kudos to Andre Roberts and Cameron Jordan for the great things that they're doing.
It's so good, Chris. One of the good things about football season ending is more guys getting involved in this and more stories we can share. And like we always say, the positive stuff, we save it for the end because, and it should be something that we read more about. And again, when it comes to you and I, it's going to be focusing on the positive and leaving the knucklehead stuff on the front page where it does not belong.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. But yeah, always want to end the show on a positive note, and you know, like you say, Bob, give credit where credit is due. Not enough credit goes to the guys that are doing great stuff. Unfortunately, the headlines go to the guys that are not here doing the opposite of that, when we really should be, you know, praising the guys for doing great things. And there are so many of them. 99% of the guys do great stuff. It's the 1% that unfortunately gets way too much publicity when these guys really deserve it. All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on this episode of Thursday Night Tailgate. We want to send out our thanks again to J.T. Thomas, Tony Collins, Chris Washington, Paul Alexander, and Beau Bock for joining us tonight. And as always, Bob, it's a great privilege is getting to spend this time with you, my friend.
That privilege is mine, Chris, and I'm just realizing you mentioned the names. 3 TNT Hall of Famers in one show, my goodness, and then a Super Bowl champion to boot. I mean, that's as good as it gets. So the honor is mine, Chris, and let's do it again next week.
Yeah, we're going to do it again next week, and scheduled to join us our former Falcons wide receiver Brian Finneran. Be good to catch back up with Brian. Former Chiefs and Bucs defensive back Charles Mincy will be making his TNT debut with us. Former Falcons Pro Bowl quarterback Steve Barkowski going to be right back with us. Had him on a couple of weeks ago, just not enough time to get all the things we wanted to get with Steve about, so we're going to get him right back on the show. Then we're going to cross over to baseball, right, with training camp getting ready to open up. We'll talk to former Toronto Blue Jays third baseman Garth Orge. And then, of course, Tony Collins will be back with us to review the Super Bowl and see how that thing turned out. So another jam-packed show with some great guests for you next week. We hope you'll come back and be a part of it with Bob and I. Want to remind everybody, how can you follow us on social media? Well, first go to Facebook. The show has got a Facebook page, Thursday Night Tailgate. Give us a like. That's very important to us. Plus, both Bob and I have our own Facebook pages as well. Please also check out our website, ThursdayNightTailgate.com. You're going to be able to go on there and see who some of our future guests are going to be. You can stream, a lot of our previous shows and stay up to date with, like I say, who's coming on with us here in the future. On Twitter, you can follow me at CT Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazari. The show is at TNT Podcast. Bob, take us home, my friend.
All right, Chris, we'll talk next week, and we want to thank also our great announcer, Joe Lajanusa, for the terrific job he does with our intro and ads, and to Kyle Turley and the Kyle Turley Band for the upcoming outro music. And on behalf of myself and Chris, thank you, everyone, tonight for listening. We appreciate you the most. And until next week, good night, Kevin. Good night, Terry. We miss you guys.